Hey, welcome back. I am going to talk to you today about the most common mistakes that everybody makes in their workouts. I'm going to show you how you can fix them. We're going to take the three most basic exercises that everyone uses in some variation or another. I'm going to break each one of them down and show you how to complete them in the best possible way so that you can maximize your workout. Now, let's start with our first one, which is a very standard squat, okay? So if we're gonna do a squat position, a few of the most common mistakes that most people make are they either just hinge forward at the waist and they lay their belly on their legs. So that is not a squat because our legs haven't actually done any work here. And this is a leg exercise, so we need to get down low and sit down in a squat. So that way we're almost creating nice 90-degree angles at our hips and at our knees. So two 90-degree angles are recommended there. So when you get down low and drive back up, that's the first mistake that we need to correct, right? Instead of here, we want to be here, okay? The next thing that we need to work on is the transition of our weight distribution from the front of our foot to our back. So again, a lot of the things that tend to happen is we get a little bit preoccupied because we tend to be quad dominant. We lean forward on our toes quite a bit and depend on those a lot. So what we need to do is transition the weight to the back of the foot. Now, I always tell my clients when they're first learning how to do this to try to pick their toes up off the floor. You don't need to strain, but just try to transition the weight to the back of the foot and then get down in that squat and try to feel it through the back sides of the legs rather than the front. That way you take a little load off of the quads. They're still working, but now you're working all the way around the leg instead of just the quads. Remember, if you push through the toes, it's more quad. The further back on the foot you go, the more it transitions around to the back side of the leg, which is excellent. Now, if we're going from a front view, now that you've seen the side, another common mistake is our legs either bow in or they'll go really far out wide. Now, depending on the type of exercise or the type of squat that you're trying to achieve here, what we usually want to do is keep our legs as straight as possible in a railroad track position to get down to the bottom, and we want to avoid rolling in or rolling out. Try to keep them still and squeeze to come back up. Okay, so if we're going down in that squat and they roll in, we want to try to push out. Right? You'll feel a lot of inside thigh activation by doing that. And if they're rolling out, we want to try to bring them in so that they're pointing the same direction as our toes are. So those are a few common things that we can fix when we get down. Try to get off your belly off of your legs and try to get your hips in a 90-degree. Push those knees out or keep them nice and straight to roll in, right? And you want to squeeze through the glutes and the hammies to come back up, while keeping the weight on the heel of the foot. Squeeze those glutes and inside thighs to come up to the top. So now that we've completed the squat position, we need to get into a lunge. It's again, one of the most common mistakes that people make is they do their lunge too far forward or their knees are rolling in. So let's break it down. One of the things that most people do, if we look at it from a front angle position, right, our knees tend to roll in, right? Or we're maybe too close together with our feet, so they're almost in the same track. What we want to do is make sure we have a railroad track position. So once you have a staggered stance position, okay, and you go down into that lunge, you want to keep your knees in line with your toes again in that railroad track position. Okay, if we find that we're rolling in or rolling out, we want to bring them back to that straight line and keep everything in that railroad track. Now, probably the biggest one that I see everybody do, especially if they're doing a walking lunge, right, where you step forward and you're walking in that direction, people tend to lean forward. So that step comes into play, but because their direction is that way, they'll lean forward, taking the weight off the heel, and a lot of pressure ends up getting put through that quad. So what we need to do is slow down, okay? First things first, slow down. Take a step, find your balance. What we want to do now is transition the weight to the front leg, but to the heel of the front leg. So just like we learned in that squat position, take the weight off the front of the toe, transition it to the heel of the foot, Then once you have yourself stable and in control, lower yourself down, right? So we're not leaning forward, but we're lowering ourselves down. So we have a nice 90-degree angle here at this front knee, a nice 90-degree angle at the back knee. So now the weight's driving through the heel of the foot and you can squeeze your glute to come up to the top. Keeping those knees in that railroad track position so they're not rolling in, okay? And squeeze to come out. Always slow it down and find your balance. If you find that the knee areas are taking a lot of the pressure, there's a good chance that if it's the front knee, you're pushing through the toe of your front foot, right? So all we have to do is a quick switch onto the heel of that front leg, so that way you feel this click in as you lower down and drive back up. If you feel it through the knee area of your back leg, there's a good chance you've put a lot of the weight onto that back leg and you're actually pushing through there and the front leg is doing nothing. So make sure you transition the weight. We'll start from the beginning. Step into position, slow it down. Remember, find your balance, find your control. Shift the weight to the back of the foot. Lower yourself down. So you have a nice 90-degree angle here. Keep the weight through the heel and drive up, squeezing that glute. Down and squeeze to come up. You have to actually tell those muscles to turn on and squeeze hard. Your core is a huge part of this entire process. Okay, now that we've taken the toe stability away, we need to make sure that we use our core to keep the balance. So make sure that when you stop and transition your weight and you're not using your toe balance anymore, you take your core and tense, do that little tuck, ribs to hips, and control your balance through that core position. Big exhale through the mouth should help that core contract. All right, well done so far, team. What we're going to go into next is a push-up. Now, it seems pretty standard and everyone tends to think that they do their push-ups very well. Even if you're not that great at it yet, you think you might know how to do it. But I'm going to show you a little trick that, again, most people do this wrong and are missing so much of the exercise. So what we're going to focus on, now regardless if you're going from your knees or from your toes, it doesn't matter, the same technique works. First things first, we need to make sure that our hips and our shoulders are in line with each other. So if you're in this position where your hips are elevated above, your shoulders are actually going to do most of the work. If you're in a position where your hips are lower than your shoulders, now you have stress on the lower back and you're not actually going to feel the extent of the exercise. So what we want to do here is get into a position where our hips and our shoulders are in line with each other and our elbows go out wide to the side, because this is a chest exercise, guys. So what we want to do is point our elbows out wide so that way our chest feels the stretch and we squeeze through the chest to come up to the top, right? Now, if I do this from a front-on position, so you can see what that looks like, it's going to be here like this, right? My hips are now in line with my shoulders. They go down and up together. My elbows are going to point out to opposite sides of the room, and I'm going to lower down, feel that stretch, and squeeze through the chest to come back up. Now you might even notice that I've got a little bit of a shake happening. It's because I've got a lot of activation. It doesn't mean that I'm tired. It means that I'm working hard and I'm getting those muscles to hit properly. So one more time from this position, nice and slow and controlled, down and back up. Control in both directions. So another thing that we need to focus on when we're going through these, guys, regardless of if you are doing from your knees or from your toes, because if you can see that same position, right, hips in line with the shoulders, elbows out wide, going from the knees, stretch and squeeze to come up, stretch and squeeze. Now let's activate our core, because as much as this is a chest exercise, it's also core. Again, what we want to do is get that little rib to hip tuck. So tuck in so that it stays nice and flat, because you might not even realize that you've got a little arch in your back. So you want to do this little tuck, and if you're not used to it, it's going to feel like you're rounded through your lower back, but you're actually not, right? It might feel like you're in this position when you're actually here. So when you do it, go through your checklist, right? Hips in line with the shoulders, elbows gonna go out wide to the side, and hip tuck. Then down into the push-up, elbows out wide, feel the stretch, hold that tuck, squeeze through the chest to come back up to the top. Big exhale through the mouth to keep that core contracted. Okay, now guys, you might notice that as I've gone through all of these exercises, I'm going slow and controlled in both directions. So whether I'm doing a squat, a lunge, or a push-up, I'm going slow in both directions because if you rush those positions, you're going to miss out on at least 50% of the exercise. So if I did my squat where I just drop and pop, right, I'm missing out on the control through the muscle and the squeeze on the way back up. Same for my lunge. If I just drop down into it, I'm missing out on 50% of the exercise, where if I control my muscles and I feel the squeeze and I tell them to do the work, they're now doing the complete exercise instead of just half. So I hope those tips and tricks have helped you today. What I want you to focus on is slow down your movement, check in with your muscles, right? Tell your body what to do, touch the muscle groups if you need to make them work harder, and make sure that they stay active, right? Go through your checklist, check in with your body, focus on the muscle activation, slow down the movement, control everything, and then add weight and speed later. That's where it's going to come into play. That's where it's going to be helpful, and that's where you're going to get strong, lean, really excellent muscles. So hope that helps today, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you later.